Are you tired of not being able to sleep at night knowing that your headlights suck? Do you hate driving down the road and thinking, man, I wish all this light that was going off into the wild blue yonder actually was shining down on the road? Do you think it's just so dim, you can't see anything? It might as well just be parking lights. I've got a solution for you. So, in the new modern world, there are these wonderful things called LEDs, and they are quickly taking over for incandescent bulbs. So we're going to chat about this a little bit more, and I'm going to show you why they're a good idea and why you need to also take care to adjust them properly. That way you can take full advantage of the kind of light output that they put down the road, and in other cases, to not blind oncoming traffic, more importantly, for most of the people on the road besides you. So, thanks for listening in. My name is Mike Usrey, and we're going to get right into it and talk about how to adjust your LEDs. That way you're properly putting light down the road, just like the manufacturer of your headlight intended. So here in front of me, I've got a few different examples of LEDs. These are the Diode Dynamics SL1 headlights, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Now, this theory that I'm going to show you, or rather this practice, is something that can be done with any headlight that has an adjustable mount. So you might have seen headlights or LEDs that go in headlights that are very similar to this, and you think, it's just a bulb, it just plugs in. Yes, it will fit in just fine, but as an example, with an incandescent bulb, you don't have to align it. An incandescent bulb has a filament, and no matter which way I rotate this bulb, that filament always stays right in the middle of the bulb. Now, for an LED, you can see we have our little chips, these little yellow guys, and that's where the light comes out, and it's on this side and on this side, on these particular LEDs. We'll talk more about some other variants in a little bit. But you can see that when I rotate this around, oh, where did they go? Oh, there they are. So this is something that you have to account for when you're installing your LEDs, because the amount of light or the kind of light and the direction of light is different that these put out. You can still get an excellent output, you just have to make sure that they're installed correctly. So, what am I even talking about? Why would we care? Why does this make any kind of difference? So, let's show some examples here so that way you can see what I'm talking about, because right now this is probably something that's just way out in the atmosphere for a lot of people, because lights are lights, right? Well, let's give you some examples, and I'll show you, starting with the stock light, stock bulbs rather, what to expect. Move some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, so I have a headlight housing here. This is just an NB headlight housing. This property will work the same if you've got an NB, NC, even an NA with aftermarket headlights, or other vehicles. This is kind of a universal application as far as adjusting the headlights for your new LEDs is concerned. So right now I've just got some incandescents in here, and just to show you what we're aiming for, this is the low beam. I'll kind of move it around, hopefully make it a little easier to see. You can see that it does have a flat cutoff pattern, and this is a relatively modern headlight pattern. If you've got something much older, then it may not look quite like this. You can see that it's not very bright. We only have a couple of lights on in the room. We wanted this to be a little darker so that way you could see a bit more of what's going on. But even though there's only a couple of lights, you can see that this stock incandescent headlight is not all that bright. So the important thing though is that we want to maintain this beam pattern. We don't want to have a bunch of light that's being spread out above that cutoff line, because that light is going to be thrown into the eyes of oncoming traffic, and it's also not usable light for the driver. That light gets lost off into the trees or off, into oncoming traffic, and it's not helping you actually see down the road. So the problem comes in when we're looking at these little tabs. Pretty much every headlight is going to have some kind of a orientation of tabs to align it when it gets plugged into the headlight. And with LEDs, you can see that they also have tabs. So this bulb in particular is a 9006 or HB4. Other bulbs will have different tabs. They're not all the same shape, but they will have the same effect, that when you plug them into your housing, they go in a certain way, and then they rotate and they lock, and they can't go in a different way. So for a bulb, this is fine because that filament, remember, it doesn't move anywhere. It's always in the center, and it always can shine out from any direction. So an incandescent with a filament like this is fine. But whenever you have an LED that you plug in there, if you were to plug it in and get it rotated into place, that chip may be at any other odd position, and light output will suffer because the inside of these headlights, the actual reflector bulbs or bowls, will be designed for a very specific light output and a very specific pattern from a very specific origination point inside that bowl. So to be able to make sure that you're getting the right beam pattern on pretty much every headlight, the thing to do here, let me walk around this side so you can see me, is you want to have your headlight, the LED headlight, where it has the chips 180 degrees apart. Obviously that's what this one is, and you want them to be pretty much facing left and right, where you're up and down 0 degrees and 180 degrees. I guess if you wanted to start from a circle at the top, that's going to be your blind spot. Now this is the most normal, the most natural orientation for an LED bulb in 99% of headlights. Now this isn't true for all headlight housings, so you may need to do a little bit of test and tune if your beam pattern doesn't come out looking correctly with that nice flat cutoff pattern. So the thing to do is, with an LED like this, you can see it has a little O-ring, and that's just to seal it in place, just like the factory one does. Keep dust and water out of the housing. But you can see there's also a little groove right there. So on headlights like these, you take that little O-ring and carefully pull it out of the way. And now there's a little screw down in there. So this little screw, in this particular LED, you'll need a small Phillips screwdriver. Some of them use Allen's, some of them use other attachments. This one's just like a number 1 or possibly even a number 0 Phillips driver. So I'm going to undo that screw, and it will allow me to pull this collar, this locking collar, out of place. Now be careful with the SL1s, that little screw does get loose, so I'm going to gently put it down on the table. But you can see now I've got this ring that has these little nodules in it, and they will lock into the inner diameter of this collar. So now this collar can spin around freely like this. So now I can orient these tabs so that way when I put it in and I lock it in place, they will be set correctly where my headlight is now straight up and down with the chips facing left and right. Now you may ask, well, that's handy, but how do I know how to get it lined up in your housing correctly? The simplest trick that I like to do is use some Sharpies, paint markers, fingernail polish, whatever, and make a mark on the back of your headlight housing. So with a stock or whatever incandescent bulb that you have here, you can see that I have a silver mark here that I've used a silver Sharpie just to draw on there. So that's my reference mark for straight up on this housing. And then you can see there's a black mark that when I lock this in place, they line up. So I know that in this orientation with these guys, these little tabs, alignment tabs, this is straight up and down on this housing. So now I can take my LED And then I can match up this ring, this locking ring, so that way I can have this or this be up or down. And really, it doesn't matter what the orientation is, if the fan is facing up or the fan is facing down. It doesn't really matter. Basically, top and bottom could be top or bottom. I would recommend trying this out, doing a little bit of a test fit in the car, just like this, loose, to see, does the fan fit in the chassis better like this, or does it fit better in the chassis, sorry, get my fingers out of the way, like this. So this will depend on your vehicle. You may need to try it one way and then flip it 180 degrees if it doesn't fit well. So I'm going to fit it to where the fan is facing up, just so that way it's a little bit more convenient to see what's going on. But just looking here, I want that to be up. I want the fan to be up. So like this. So I know that I want this tab, the fatter tab, and the skinnier tab on either side of it. So we want to spin this around about here. So sorry that this one is probably a little hard to see since it's a black on black plastic housing. But I've got the skinnier of the three tabs on this side, like this. That way, straight up is going to be straight up for this one. Then I take my locking ring, and there is one screw on this side and then an empty screw hole on this side. So the one hole is on that side. I slot this down into place like that. I grab my little screw and stick it in there and tighten it down. Now, do not over tighten this. This is a little bitty screw into relatively thin metal. It is definitely easy to strip out if you go hog wild on it. So now, I've got this adjuster in here. I'm going to leave the O-ring off for now just to show you for test fitting. But I'm going to slip this into the housing. Remember, I want this fan to be basically straight up and down. Now this one, it is just a little bit off to the side. It's maybe 5 degrees, 7 degrees rotated clockwise from straight up and down on this housing. And unfortunately, with some LEDs, you may not be able to get it perfect at that 0 degree mark. And most of the time, that's okay. You have a little bit of a margin of error where it's still going to work great. So now that I've put this in here and gotten it lined up, let's plug it back in. There we go. So now you can see I still have that nice cutoff line, crisp at the top, nice hot spot right in the middle, so that way it's throwing the brightest portion of the light down the road the farthest. And you can see, hopefully from this video, that the beam pattern is pretty much wholly retained, but now we have a lot more output. This is a much brighter and a much wider light than what the original incandescent was able to put out. So now you've seen what it looks like, what it should be. Let's show you a bad example of what it might be if you don't align your bulb. Let's see. So this is another one out of the box, and bear in mind that these are very good LEDs, and there's nothing wrong with it doing it this way, but out of the box, they are almost guaranteed not to be clocked correctly. So that's not anything to say about whatever brand you end up buying, but it's something you should always remember, that out of the box, they're likely not going to be clocked correctly to your particular housing. So this one, you can see that the tabs, hopefully you can see the tabs. This is where the skinny tab is on this guy, and the skinny tab is way over here on this one that we just adjusted. So now, when I put this into the housing, there we go, and turn it on, our beam pattern is not going to line up quite as well as it should. So this one, you can kind of see it still does have actually a relatively decent cutoff line. It's not terrible, but there's a little bit of a color flicker up at the very top in the middle. And it's like the color is being bounced off at different angles. And you can see that there's a lot more width on this side, and it got really strange and skinny on the left-hand side. So rotating that headlight LED in the housing will start to play havoc on your beam output, and it'll make it less effective overall because the left side of your headlight is now, or the output of this headlight is not very useful. So it's important to get your headlight LED lined up correctly so that way you can retain the factory output and beam pattern to throw light effectively down the road. So now let's talk about LED design, because this is another thing that's very easy to get mixed up with. LEDs are LEDs, right? Cool, they're bright. I can get some off of Amazon for 30 bucks, and they're just as bright, if not brighter, than what's advertised on reputable sites like FlyinMiata.com, right? Why do I need to pay X amount of dollars for something that I can get for half or a quarter of the price? Not all headlights, and especially LEDs, are created equal. And to show you case in point, here's a set of LEDs that, yeah, it looks pretty similar, you know, same kind of style. This is the same orientation. It's a or same version of the headlight bulb. This is also a 9006 or HB4, and overall looks pretty similar. You know, slightly different shape down here at the base, and it's got a cute little black cap that it's wearing. You know, but what's the real difference here? Why would you want to, or why would you care what kind of LED it is that you're putting in your car? So LEDs like this one, you can kind of see it's got these little frog eye things, these little lenses. And you might think, well, you know, that's not so odd. I've seen LEDs that are in these little 3.5 millimeter acrylic bubbles. You know, that's normal for LEDs. Well, for the off-the-shelf, cheapy kind of stuff, it is. Yes, you're right. But when it comes to headlights, you really want to have a very precise LED chip, because otherwise that light, remember that I was talking about, you're trying to emulate as close as you can a filament of an incandescent bulb. That way all of the light is coming from as small and as central a point as possible and being spread evenly and reflected out of your headlight housing bowl down the road. The problem with LEDs like this that have a big chip, let's put them side by side for comparison. They have a big chip on this guy compared to this relatively small chip. You might think, oh, bigger is better. Yeah. No, this means that now this chip is actually about the size of 2 filaments rather than 1. And so you're getting more light, possibly, but spread out over a wider area of origination. And that'll mess with the beam pattern and mean that what's going down the road is likely not going to be ideal. Just like how messing with the rotation of an adjustable LED like this changed how the pattern looked, same thing with these guys. Having it where it doesn't have the same, or, you know, imitates a incandescent bulb for that light origination point, you will absolutely get a different beam pattern by having your light output start from a different point than it was intended and designed from the factory. So, hopefully, this is all good information and will arm you to be better aware of the kind of different LEDs that are out on the market, because if you go look on eBay, Amazon, other websites, you name it, Alibaba, whatever, there are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of different kinds of LEDs out there, and the majority of them are junk. Yes, they're brighter, but they're going to be something like this that wasn't actually well designed for your headlight. They're really bright, and if I were to turn this on, it would probably amaze everybody at just how bright it is. You'd have to turn your screen brightness down. But that doesn't mean that that light is as usable as something that has been finely tuned to really put that light down the road where you need it and can use it. So, in summary, be careful what you're buying. Look at the headlights, the bulbs. See if it's something like this that has a proper design. See if it's something that has a proper heat sink. We didn't really cover that, but that is a pretty important thing for LEDs. They do get hot, just like an incandescent bulb does. So they do need to have adequate cooling to match it. So having an active heat sink, this is the SL1 from Diode Dynamics. And it does have a nice cooling fan in there. It draws air from one side through a heat sink that you can't see because it's all in this enclosure, and then blows it out, so it's got lots of airflow to keep this housing cool. This one, it's got a little plastic fan in there, and it spins around and it makes a cute little whirring noise, but you can see possibly that it's supposed to be black. This is the same black anodized aluminum as what this is supposed to be, but see how it's turned this bronzy color? That's what happens when an anodized coating gets really hot. It will change color. And you can see here there's kind of a color gradient here of where it started out black and then it's been just cooked within an inch of its life. So this will degrade your LEDs over time. So if you do happen to buy one that doesn't have great cooling, even if it has good output and a good beam pattern, adequate cooling is also very important. Let's go to the comment section and see if there are any questions. Do we have anything that I haven't covered?
There was a customer who asked a question earlier on, but it sounds like he got clarification.
Okay.
No other questions. So you might ask Bill if he still has questions to let us know.
Yeah, so Bill, if you're still watching, I see that there's comments down below that you've asked, and I think that I've covered them in the video. If I haven't, please comment again and let us know, and we can get back to you in the comments after this video has posted. Also, you can give us a call or send us an email if that's easier for you. Oh, we have another one that just popped up, though.
Do we have an ETA on an H7 low beam option?
So, question is, are we going to be carrying any other bulbs? Because right now we do have a limited variety of bulbs that we have. I say bulbs, they're technically not bulbs. LEDs. Sorry, it's one of those, technically. But we have H4s that are incoming. We are looking into options. I won't give away any spoilers, but we are looking to expand our lineup. So keep an eye on our website. And also, if you haven't signed up for our email newsletter, jump on the website, scroll down to the bottom, and look for the newsletter link, and you can get signed up to receive our monthly email newsletter. So that way you can be updated as soon as we have new products that hit the shelves, or if we have new updates about any of the goings on here at the shop. That's a great place to keep informed. We only do about once a month, so we don't spam your inbox. We try not to be too obnoxious. Sorry. So that's a good place to look. Hopefully is the answer. We're looking into it. Anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you very, very much. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you can apply this kind of knowledge to your next purchase. If you're looking at updating your possibly older vehicle, you think that, hey, I'd really like to bring it into the modern age, not just in the way that it looks on the outside, but the way that I look through the windshield going down the road at nighttime, because as most of us are aware with the older cars, the older headlights just don't stand up to the modern day LEDs and HIDs that are on the market that the newer cars come with from the factory. And this is actually why I didn't cover it for ND, because the newest cars have LEDs from the factory. So there you go. If you didn't know, now you know. That's why we don't have bulbs for the newest car, because it's an integral part of the housing itself. So newer cars, this doesn't really apply to most of them nowadays. You'll see more and more LEDs coming into the market. But for your older vehicle, if you want to update it, and you've got any more questions that we didn't cover here, please give us a call, send us an email. You can also get a hold of us on Facebook or Instagram by sending us a message or chatting with us. We'd love to discuss more options with you if you're interested or have more questions. And as always, we'll see you here next week, Thursday at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. And we'll have another interesting subject to talk about and hopefully update you on some more info. Thanks again. We sure appreciate it. We'll see you next time.